Maybe we will, maybe we won't. This is clap for audio, so line it up. Alright. This is podcast 4. Podcast 4. In the works. With a bunch of other snippets and slivers, editing that I have to do. I am finally working off of a drive. I don't have anything mounted on the wall anymore. I used a wall mount that you then suction. These things are great. You can put them on cars or anything, windows, walls. They're pretty good. But no longer. Now I've got it on the monopod. I've got it on the clip on the monitor and on top of the printer. Yeah. I'm using a ThinkPad drive to store these on a terabyte. It's a hard drive, hard disk drive. It's not a solid disk drive. So it's a little slower, but slow, whatever. 160, 180, 200 meg a second. More than that, maybe 300, 400. Well, maybe 200. The solid disk drive, I think, has a read-write of, or some type of I/O speed of 540 megasecond. And then I don't even know if you use the Thunderbolt on the Mac. That's a 10 gig interface for my Mac, which is a MacBook Pro from 2011. The Surrey Bridge processor. It's an i5 13-inch. It's not the i7. It's not the 15-inch. I got tons of memory in it. I think 8 or 16 gig of the awesome memory. And I've got a 120 gig hard drive and a 500 gig expanded secondary drive. I took the disk out, the CD reader, the player, and put another drive in there, but I'm going to get another external drive, solid state, so that I can read and write faster. These videos seem to add up. Not really, but they do. It seems like any of the normal GIF videos are 3, 4, 5, 6 gig for 30 minutes, maybe. 7 gig, I don't know, for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I read somewhere, whatever the rate was at frames per second, 24 frames per second, a 1 minute 1080p video comes out to be 130 meg. So you do the math. I think it's something like 7 or 8 or 10 gig for, whatever, an hour, 35, 40, 45 minutes. So these things eat up space, but space isn't the premium that it used to be. We've clearly gotten better with space. But yeah, terabyte, this is a terabyte, so I'm not going to have any problems with this for a while, which is good. So now I've got storage. The cameras seem to be working. Again, I'm going to state the Hero 4 seems to be the camera that works the best. The audio, the picture. The Nikon provides a pretty good picture, semi-good picture. My lighting comes from my left over here, dependent upon the time, midday, late day, whatever that I make these. Morning. And that seems to be good, maybe a bit light. This, I had the Hero over here with light in the background. It's still adjusted well in the 1080p. The Canon seems to have the worst audio, but it's an older camera and it's still pretty good. It's an ELPH 310HS, which is multiple years old. I think it shoots 720p. I don't know what it does for audio, but it's a good camera. Yeah, we'll bring these things together for a podcast. We'll have a few before we roll. That's where we sit right now with some of the work. More to come on that feature. I went and saw Free Solo, the Alex Honnold, El Capitan, Freerider Climb movie. Let's speak briefly on that. I've seen his podcasts. He's had multiple with Rogan over 7 or 8 years. He's 33 years old now. He's at the prime of his career. I guess, he's never had injury. He's had a couple injuries since he met his girlfriend, Sani something. Met her at a book signing in Seattle, somewhere up in the northwest. They started some kind of relationship. She seems pleasant. It was long distance. He's lived for a decade. He lived for a decade in his van, in 2 vans. One that he took from the family, one that he purchased after he finally started to see some monies, because he is probably the most prolific and the greatest solo climber, free solo climber in current times, and maybe in history, and one of the few that's still alive. He's also very, very experienced any other equipment climber. Free solo, right? So when you free solo, that is free of equipment of any type other than a chalk bag and climbing shoes, and soloing, climbing alone. No one climbing with you. Nothing assisted. So you're essentially climbing something as you are normally, with maybe a bag of chalk to assist you with your grip and some sticky sneakers that allow you to stick on slightly more. And I tell you what, when you think about these features, the vast majority of us don't experience rock climbing. We don't. We see it, we watch it. We don't experience football. We see it, we watch it. A lot more kids play football in some type of organized league, or even out on the grass or the dirt around their homes, than they rock climb. And you may climb trees, you may climb buildings, you may climb things around. That's what boys do. Boys are climbers. But you just don't get an understanding until you watch what these guys do. And I'm not somebody who's set on fantastic things, and I'm not someone that's wowed. I appreciate human endeavor or whatnot, but unless you've been to some of these places that are mountainous, that have these granite faces, these limestone faces, whatever they are, some much more dangerous than others, right? Even these frozen waterfalls, and our experience recently with some of the extreme climbers for the Great Mountains, Everest, or Mount McKinley, whatever it's called up in Alaska, the Indian name, which isn't huge, or even walking up, the Kilimanjaro in Africa, which you can walk to the ascent, or if you go out to Colorado and you climb one of the 14ers, of which there's 50, which is 14,000+ feet into the atmosphere. And you get up to the top, and it's hard to breathe. And you're looking down on Earth. You're around clouds. You don't understand the grandeur of this. And then to walk up to some of these faces that are sheer from your glaciers, from your, giant ice flows that have carved out of the Earth during whatever period, and to see people climbing them, that's another strange thing. And it's not really comparable to these gyms where you have these pre-formed handholds that are drilled into walls, all form cast, some more aggressive than others, because there's an entire measurement system on how they grade the difficulty and the pitch and the face. If it's slightly vertical, if it's almost vertical, if it's vertical, or if it's even inverted, meaning you have to climb, you're climbing upside down, and you have to hold on. So, I watched the movie. It was incredible. It's insane. And a lot of the movie, it's an hour and 37 minutes, 97 minutes. A lot of the movie focuses on this couple, Jimmy Chin and his wife. He's a very experienced climber, and he's a professional photographer as well as she is. And over the course of multiple years, they follow this cat, and they follow him because even when I knew of him, you knew something extraordinary was going to occur from this guy, because for the last 15 years he's been one of the greatest climbers. His hands are huge. It's hypertrophy from, extreme training. His fingers are huge. All the ligature, everything about them, the muscularity, and there's not a lot of muscle in the finger. And I think I've seen him explain this before. It's mostly joint and tendon and whatnot. Not to say there isn't some muscle, but his hands are exaggeratedly massive. The guy hasn't taken any drugs. He's not a weightlifter or bodybuilder. And yet they're huge. And he's got this fingerboard that has these holes that he drilled into the side of his van. And he sits there and does these exercises where he hangs or he pulls up. And he's sinewy and skinny. But every muscle is just, optimized. And he's multiple years ago, he began eating a vegetarian, maybe even a vegan lifestyle, doesn't eat meat. Some, just because of he wanted to make the choice, and then it turned into something bigger. He felt that there was purpose not to eat animal. And you watch this guy and you look at him, and it's multiple years of his life as he climbs and free solos some things, which is incredible. And you see how Jimmy Chin and these multiple photographers are astounded to watch this guy climb stuff with a chalk bag. And ultimately, I guess it was talked about, he talks about it for 7 or 8 years. He always thought, wouldn't it be great? Is this the year I climb El Capitan, which is out there in Yosemite. And it's, arguably, I guess, or unarguably, the greatest wall that you can climb, 3,000 feet high. It's got multiple faces. He climbs with a guy, Tommy Caldwell, who climbed with another guy, the Dawn Wall, which is, if you look at this thing, it's sort of angular, and there's a wall up here. Took him 13 days or something like that to climb it. I mean, it's the most difficult climb, and Tommy Caldwell and his partner climbed that. Honnold climbed sort of up the front of it and then over to the left of it when you're looking toward the wall, and it's the free rider climbing path. And he goes over multiple challenging, they call them pitches, which are sections of climb. One's called Free Blast, and it's almost like this polished section that's almost vertical with these tiny holds. And he, that was one of the most fearful periods for him of the climb, because there's nothing to hold. You're on a single foothold that is a little crevice that sticks 1/4 of an inch off the rock, and you have to put that toe hold, all your weight on it, to progress to another hold. But when you look at this guy and his life, and then, he was pretty injury free, as I said, until he met this gal Sani at a book signing. She sort of spent time with him. He lives in a van. So, and he travels wherever the climb is, and he travels all over the globe, and he started this, energy company, foundation, that he tries to provide low cost or free energy to individuals, free energy to third world countries around the world. Because I think he stated there's 1 billion people in the world that don't have electric, right? Out of the 8 billion people on the planet. And we in America, we don't care about that. We hear it, whatever. And the statistics are staggering. The number of people who've never used a phone, a cell phone, a regular phone, and that's annually decreasing because phones are turning into candy. Everybody's got one, and it's not landline based anymore. You can use them in the middle of the desert, whatever, as long as there's some kind of tower or card, wireless card or something. But so his foundation does that. He travels all over the world. He climbs. There's no interruption to that. It's been his only goal. He's like Tiger Woods with golf. When you watched Tiger Woods and you experienced him as a young adult, 20-year-old, and the guy could forcibly sink 20-foot putts, willed them in, and no one else could do that. Michael Jordan, who could forcibly change a game by shooting multiple three-pointers. Their ability rose above the ability of anyone else that was elite in that field. That's what this guy is. And he's very, very humble. Strange. He doesn't consider himself one of the best climbers in the world. He points out the young people that are coming up that climb much more aggressively and better than him, that are going to explore new routes. He talks about Tommy Caldwell as probably one of the greatest climbers, that it was his hero as he grew up. And the majority of the movie is this cycle of him climbing and leading up to the last 10-15 minutes of the show, free solo, where he climbs El Capitan. And they show these pieces, which there aren't clips out showing them. There's multiple challenging sections in the climb. One of them is called the bouldering problem, and there's it's a crux, and he's got to do this kick with his leg out. Dude, you're on a wall, 2,500 feet up on a 3,000-foot wall, and he's hanging on this giant, in his hands, as I said, they're like, meat hooks, hanging on this giant chunk of rock that looks like a sponge. He calls it a loaf or something. And he's got to switch feet and then move to it and then put a thumb and then switch thumb with a finger and then do this karate kick. And it's a full extension. And he's a tall dude. He's long and lanky. Out to this wall and then changes holds so that he can progress upward to, I think, a crack, which he then follows up quite extensively. The cracks are the easiest to climb. They have the best leverage. And some of them are massive and they run 1,500 feet on the wall. It's these other sections where that doesn't exist. And you watch this stuff and it's just foolish. And we don't understand that because, one, you don't have walls like that you can climb around that even if they were 5 feet off the ground, you'd be like, oh, that was challenging. Yeah, I really used my power and my grip. Oh, and I hung on. It took them 3 hours, 57 minutes to climb this wall. And there were multiple sections like that. And they grade them, as I said, whatever they call the difficulty. I don't even know the grading scale. I can't quote it right here. A 15 or a 12 or whatever they call it. A 15.6, 15.7, or there's a 17. It's the most difficult. I don't know. I'm not a climber. But it's insane when you watch this thing. And clearly, this is what this man has done his life. And you get a little bit of background, which I've not seen anywhere else. And he is a personal, private individual. They call him jokingly, even in this documentary, this free solo National Geographic special, Jimmy Chin calls him Spock. And they make it as he makes that statement to another climber, another photographer, because Honnold starts up in, I think, October, maybe August, September of 2016, starts up El Capitan at 4 in the morning. Because of the time of the day, he wanted to be at a certain place so that the light was at a certain location before he hit a certain spot, because it allowed him to visualize the climb better. So he's got a headlamp on at 4 in the morning, climbing up this first section, which is the free blast. And he goes to make this hold, and he goes, nope, I'm not feeling it. And you're like, wait, what? And clearly there's a photographer right next to him. And he stops and he goes, I'm not feeling it. I want to get off. I want to get out. I want to go. I want to get down. He's got no ropes or anything. And then they're like, wait, what? And the walkie-talkie comes into play. Click. Yeah, he said no go or whatever. He wants to stop. And somebody goes, well, repeat that? I think Jimmy Chin. Well, what? And he's like, yeah, he's getting off. And they're like, yeah, we're canceling it. And he goes down. And they break to Jimmy Chin in a piece a little later. And he goes, even Spock has, emotions. And even a little later in the film, Jimmy Chin states that was something that gave me some faith and belief that this was going to be okay, because he had the ability, not from the pressure, from the film crew, from whatever, to power through it. He didn't feel comfortable, he felt weird, and he backed off. And I don't think they'd seen that before, because there's another section on Half Dome, which is in Yosemite. It's called Free Falls or something like that. Giant waterfall, and you climb up next to it. And Honnold admits that there were a couple sections in it where he was uncomfortable, he put himself in a position, he was no longer in control, his anxiety went up, but he powered through it. And he said, that is not the way I climb, that's not the way I'm going to climb. That's when you're cautious, you're no longer cautious, and you'll fall. And the guy is systemically and logically fundamental when you watch him. He knows people die. They talk about deaths during this thing of climbers. pretty intense. And he admits, he goes, I'm not. So you watch him actually practice excessively these pieces where it's memorization. He keeps a climbing log. He's sitting with Caldwell, and Caldwell's talking to him and going, do you ever note about the tree or the sunset or the birds? And he goes, no, not in the climbing log. And the climbing log is crimp, left thumb crimp, switch foot, right foot on hold, and that's what it is. This guy's the Tiger Woods of climbing, or worse. And I think it took someone like that to climb this thing, because when you look at it for 4 hours, and this guy's a fiend. I mean, in the documentary, they're like, oh, he's moving fast. He blows through these pieces fluidly. And I've only heard him talk about his climbing. Caldwell finally states stuff about it. He's incredible. He goes, look, man, I don't like climbing with Alex because he's fluid and he's fast. And so you get the real gist of just how much of an expert, a fiend, a spider on the wall this guy is. And you see that in the movie. And it's extraordinary. It's incredible. For about the last 30, 35, 37 minutes maybe, I was on my seat. I was sweating. My hands were sweating. I had taken my hat off. You're fully engrossed. The tension's building. It's awesome. And they did an incredible job. And they show the flavors of how they got the pieces that they wanted to show intimately with him moving on the wall. Explicitly zooming into footholds as he adjusts. I mean, you get an idea of, oh my fucking God. And then they show you drone shots, which you don't get the idea because it's floating above a dude that's on this wall and he looks like nothing. But then you see it, and then you see pieces where he climbs out and over things. Yeah, it's extraordinary. And he is an extraordinary individual. And it takes extraordinary work. No one will climb that wall without that type of excess that he applied. And he knows that, and he said that. And this was the culmination. I don't know where his career will go. Who knows? And he states that. He states that to his girlfriend and to others. Don't know. I sort of go where I go. That's why I lived in a van for 10 years, so I could climb where I could climb with the weather, with my desire, whatever. But clearly he's moving into a social aspect of his life. There's a house they purchased in Vegas. They show him doing that. Clearly it's her that wants that house. You can tell. She's talking about furniture locations. He doesn't care. It's a place to cohabitate. You can see that he's found comfort with this individual. Caldwell states the relationship works well and he's surprised. You see the personality of Alex Honnold, and he is a strange, extreme individual. Spock is a good the typecast for what this guy's character seems to be. You learn about his family. His mother only spoke to he and his sister, and I don't know if that continues to this day, in French. His father, his mother states, was something of an Asperger's patient or an Asperger's sufferer. And this guy, if he was not traveling with the wife, with Alex and his sister, he was not doing well in life. He applied this rigidity to these trips where they were seeing things, and if that wasn't occurring, there was strife and struggle. You can see flavors of that in Alex. He talks about how it was 23, 24 years of age before he hugged, and he exhibits how he had to learn and practice how to hug. The word L, the L word, love, was not used in his family. You can see how he struggles socially with this female. You can also see how he's gained so much from the climbing community because he talks like them. Clearly, it's a place where it's given him some kind of way to be a hippie or let your hair down or to be chill. And it's beautiful how he walks through Yosemite and there's nature, there's deer, there's waterfalls, there's birds, the sunlight, the green, the rock and dirt. I mean, it's so strange. And yet you see how whatever components that made that kid and that family that came together gave him the ability to turn into this fiend of a climber And that's what he zoned in on. And man, when you watch what he just did in June 3rd, 2017, 2018, climbing that rock alone, you're like, yeah, and we always say this, I don't know if anybody else is ever going to do that. I mean, you may be a section of it, but 3,000 feet, and the way that dude does it, and it is a feat. And I don't climb, but it's stated that's the greatest climbing feat that's ever been, and maybe Hillary or whatever going up to the top of Everest, I would put it, I guess, at that realm. Just that incredible. Hey, that's the dog. Her belly's squishing. Yes, she's gonna, yeah. My dog Eureka. But fabulous movie. Everyone should see it. It was at limited theater release, and yet I think because of the popularity, it's expanded to other theaters, and it was in the neighborhood theater at 11:30 in the morning. So I went and saw it. And it was awesome. Nobody in there, of course, because nobody's going to go see a climbing movie down here in Florida. One of the theaters in the corner, right, that's musty and old and small and dirty, and it was awesome. Probably be great in IMAX, holy crap, or whatever, or even just on the giant screen. What a feat, what an extraordinary individual. It seems like he's finally getting notoriety. I almost wish he would state he's done, but you can see the immaturity. I don't want to slander or say anything. She seemed to be someone who, she states that Alex in the movie, Sonny, his girlfriend, states he's brutally honest, and you can see that. You can see it in his TED Talk or whatever he's done, because he says things that are absurd almost, and the audience or the party that he's with will laugh, and he goes, yeah, that's not meant to be funny. He just talks in fact. And because he does something extreme, sometimes the statements are absurd, they're silly. But epic, very good movie. I recommend it to anyone. Go see it. It's going to come out on Nat Geo on TV. I'm going to watch it again on the big screen, which would be awesome. It was pretty awesome in the movie theater. And you get to really see this kid. I hope he doesn't climb like that again, because it's stated multiple times, and it's just a fact. Everybody that does this, sooner or later, they fall, they die. And you can see that this kid's different, but Caldwell talks about how he puts an armor on when he climbs, and he goes into this place, and it's almost invincible. And you sort of have to do that to do what you're doing, to hang off a rock at 3,000 feet, right? And climb upside down or whatever. And Tommy states that this relationship with Sonny challenges that. It removes focus, which is the truth. Tiger was unstoppable when he had singular golf focus. And then you meet your wife and you have kids, and there's notoriety and popularity and huge money and private jets and TV shows, and everywhere you go you recognize Ronda Rousey, Hollywood, and you're making movies. And ultimately there's a change in the dynamic that whatever made you great, because you no longer... The only person I never really saw that with was Vijay Singh. Practiced 7, 10, 12, 15 hours a day at golf. Great golfer. Never turned into that epic golfer, great golfer, and still does it today. Practices extreme hours and is just a great golfer. Because it takes that unique individual who's got the skills, the biology, all those things to come together to be that epic, that legend. This guy's the legend in climbing. Incredible movie. I would recommend it to anyone. It almost makes you want to climb rocks like Tom Cruise. I remember watching Top Gun saying, I want to join the Navy and fly jets, right? Yeah, and that's what a movie's supposed to do. It's supposed to trigger emotion and reaction and those things inside you that, wow, unbelievable. They scan his amygdala. They put Alex Honnold in an MRI, brain scanning device, and they show you photos. The normal amygdala lights with the triggering of specific pictures in the sequence. And I don't know explicitly what it is, but I'll show you a boat, I'll show you a cloud, I'll show you a dead body, I'll show you an explosion, I'll show you a birthday cake, I'll show you a pretty girl, I'll show you a bush, right? and you can see the part of your brain that fires, that triggers reaction. His brain didn't fire. And they talk about it. Your amygdala is not reacting. We don't know why. We know that you don't react like that. You're different. And he states, well, maybe it's because I've put myself in these extreme situations and I've honed that. There's no expectation or hypothesis or solution that comes out of this review, this medical review in the film. It's brief, but you start to understand, oh, that's how this guy hangs off a rock at 2,500 feet, has 500 or 1,000 feet above him, and he's got ice water in his veins. His brain's not even firing from these pictures. And if you've ever watched him, he sort of has this blank look, and he speaks monotone, and that's, yeah, I climb rock. And they go, well, Alex, you could fall and die. And he goes, well, yeah, that's sort of what it is. You're climbing a rock, and the worst case scenario is that you can fall and die. But that's what I do. It's strange, entertaining, awesome. It shows you how the potential of the human mind and the human body, just wonderful. The things we can accomplish when you work hard, and there's struggle and strife, and you can become legendary. I mean, it's an awesome, awesome movie. It was great to see. I'm going to keep following this guy. I hope he settles down and has some kind of a life. I don't know if he ever will. It seems like this is what he does. I hope he doesn't die on a mountain. I hope he changes it up, and he likes to climb with rope, so maybe he does that going forward, marries this gal, I don't know if they're married, and has a family and moves on, and wouldn't that be cool? But who knows? That's part of the wonderful, story that they share too. I mean, who knows what the future is for this cat? Clearly, the most prolific and greatest free soloing or free climbing individual in this time right now, one of the few that still exists, and this story that they tell at El Capitan and this accomplishment that he completes, astounding. So go see it, enjoy it, and celebrate it. It's, like when you're watching Vision Quest and the kid goes and sees the cook, and the cook says, what's going on? And he goes, what are you doing? Why aren't you at work today? The cook goes, at work today? Isn't this the day that you wrestle shoot? And what are you talking about? And he goes, yeah, who cares? He goes, who cares? He goes, dude, let me tell you something. I was sitting in my little apartment here watching a station in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, and this guy gets a pass over his head and jumps upside down in a bicycle format and kicks the ball above his head backwards, upside down, into the net and scores. And the stands explode and he gets up and runs around. Pele. And he's sitting there crying because another human being has lifted the entire species up with his ability. And he says, that's why I've chosen to take this day off, get dressed up, and watch you wrestle. It's not the 2 minutes. It's what happens in the 2 minutes or the 4 hours that you climb that rock. Awesome. So, it is a celebration of humanity. It's a wonderful film. I would tell anyone to go see it, regardless of your desires or your hobbies or whatnot. It's a celebration in humanity. And very interesting, and a great watch. All right, I think that's where we're at for this 4th webcast. Out.